I would like this to be as interactive as possible. I don't have all of the answers on sales, but I'd like to share a few of my ideas from my experience and the clients we work with. And then I'd love to hear what's working for you, what's not working for you, perhaps some specific questions. This presentation is provocatively entitled Learning to Love Sales. I've met very few people in professional services who have a love affair with sales. In fact, I've met many more that will use different words to describe sales. They wish they didn't have to do it, and they wish it wasn't part of their life. But I do think that if we can shift the mindset from something that's negative around sales to something that's more positive, we have a better chance of succeeding. So a very quick bio on myself. I'm originally an attorney admitted to practice in South Africa. I practiced in a large, for South Africa, law firm, about 60 partners in commercial law. But the majority of my career has been entrepreneurial. I spent most of my time actually in Asia. I lived in Japan 18 years. I love Japan and going back to Japan now. I live in Australia now. But I built businesses which sell services, solutions, and software to a whole variety of clients, multinational businesses mostly, originating from the United States or Europe. Some were in financial services, large banks, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, Dresdner Bank, and so on. Some were in consumer products like Unilever and Procter and Gamble, and some were manufacturing businesses, Caterpillar, Boeing. Those were the kinds of clients we had the opportunity to work with. And I mention that because I really had to up my game in sales in order to attract the attention of those kinds of businesses who have a lot of options, of course. They could work with much larger, more substantial businesses than the ones I was running, but they chose to work with us. And that's because we worked really hard on our sales process and trying to provide a solution to them which was relevant. And I'm now the owner and CEO of Panalitix, enjoying working with and learning from professional services firms, mostly in North America, Northern Europe, and of course, Australia and New Zealand, where we are based. So that's a very quick background on my background, and especially with regard to sales. So let's think for a moment about what the challenge is here. Why is this even important? Why are you here? And what is the challenge which professionals might be having with regard to sales? I want to suggest 3 ideas to you today, which might relate to you or may not. So many professionals, and probably everyone on this call, has considerable skills in a particular substantive area, right? That could be tax or litigation or financial planning or estate planning or something like that. However, many of you did not have a module in your studies or have not had a lot of experience, perhaps, in the development of what is sometimes called interpersonal skills, right? The ability to interact and communicate effectively with other humans. And that doesn't mean you're bad at it. It just means that perhaps you haven't had as much practice as you would like. And what does this mean? Well, there are people who will go into a room with another person for 5 minutes and they will come out knowing a lot about that person. And there's others who will come out knowing very little. And that comes down to our ability to ask intelligent, interesting, relevant, meaningful questions, and then listening very carefully to the answers and extrapolating from those answers, perhaps what this person wants to achieve, their goals, their strategies, their plans, their vision. And I'm saying that in the big picture, not what do you want to do tomorrow or next week or next month, but where is it that you want to take your business and your own career in the next year or 3 years or even 5 years. And then to empathetically respond and show interest in the agenda of that particular person. The other day, an accountant said to me, I hate sales because it just takes so long. Why don't they just decide? Why don't they just decide what they want and decide to work with me? Well, that indicates a lack of patience. And I'm afraid to say sales does require patience, because often in professional services, when you are ready to sell is not the same time as the person is ready to buy. In fact, there may be a long sales cycle before those things match. So there could be a lack of skills, particularly these interpersonal skills. But here's another idea. Many of you have joined large, successful businesses, but in professional services, we seldom have sales or business development as a dedicated, vital function in the business. If you joined Apple Corporation or some large manufacturer, there would be a sales division and a marketing division and an R&D division and a finance division and so on. But in professional services, for a variety of reasons, we have seldom taken sales out and put it into its own function. Now, what does that mean? It means that there's not a forum where professionals can easily learn the skills, the process, the technology, the methods of sales, and really hone their experience in that area, which is what we might call a process gap. We haven't had to make sales as important as other organizations in other industries have had to make it. And here's another idea which may resonate with you. One, it's what we might call the confidence gap. You know, I often speak to professionals who are very, very exceptional in their particular field. They might be a world authority or a national authority on a particular area of their practice. And that's great, of course. But they also underestimate, or they fail to understand, the value or the benefits that they provide to their clients. They don't put it in those terms. They think about what they do, how long it takes them, and how they go about it, their methods, but not the outcomes for the clients. And if we can't easily articulate the outcomes we bring to our clients, then we may not be able to get our point across, or our point of differentiation. And this often comes from a lack of confidence. So here are some ideas which might influence how you go about sales, and what may be holding some people in professional services back. I don't want to be presumptuous and assume everyone's the same. Of course, they're not. There are some people in professional services who are excellent in business development and sales. But these are some of the things that we might find are holding us back. Now, what I'm going to go through very quickly in the next few points is material which, honestly, we could spend an hour on any one of these points. Obviously, we don't have that time. So I'm going to dash through these ideas, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on these attributes of people who tend to succeed in sales and even love sales. So let's get into this. You know, if I asked you in your business, what exactly are your sales goals? You might say something like, well, we'd like to increase our revenue this year in the next 12 months by 5%, 10%, 15%. You might say, we'd also like it to be profitable revenue. We'd like to maintain our 66% gross profit on that, or whatever the numbers are in your business. That's good. That's a sales goal, right? But then we need to drill into that. Is that revenue coming from existing clients to whom you're going to sell more? Or is it coming from new clients that you're going to bring on? Is it coming from the existing services that you currently sell? Or maybe you're going to launch additional services. Is it from a certain region, the region you currently serve? Or maybe you're launching into a new region. But I feel that a lot of how we approach sales depends on these sales goals. Some of you will say, I actually don't want to take on new clients. I just want to increase revenue from my existing clients by 5% or 10%. So we want to get really clear on this in order to move to the next phases of our sales plan and our sales process. Here's another foundational idea. What exactly do you sell? If I asked everyone in your organization, would they give me an identical answer to that? Now, in, let's say, a large law firm, you might say, well, honestly, we sell a lot of stuff. I mean, we sell what the client needs, and that's good, but it's also dangerous because we can go into service areas either where we don't have the right skills, or we don't have the ability to do that really profitably and give the client a delightful experience. So we want to not only define what we do sell, but we want to define what we don't sell as well. What is it that if a client asks you for, you would say, no, that's not what we do here, but I can refer you to someone else. We want to get really clear on that if we're to succeed in sales. And I mentioned this before. It's not so much what you sell, the technicalities of your tax services, compliance services, litigation, commercial agreements, whatever. It's not so much that. It's what they do for other people. It's how they make your clients feel. Think about that for a second. Think about a recent successful client engagement. And what did your client feel as a result of your excellent services? What did they do? What did they do differently? And how did it change the way they approach something? If you can answer that question, we're starting to talk about benefits. And there are some clients that you absolutely want to work with, and there's other clients that you do not want to work with in any circumstances. And we are talking here about the target client. If we can get really specific on the attributes of that target client, their goals and what they're trying to accomplish, and match that with these services, which are highly well defined, we make our job not only in sales, but also in marketing a lot easier, because we know how to find these people. We know what's worrying them, their challenges, their opportunities, their desires, which means we can communicate with them in a way that's meaningful. We can generate proposals which make sense and they're likely to take up, which means that our sales closure rate will be much better. And that's when we start to love sales, when we're succeeding with it. So getting really clear on the target client's important. Here's something that we refer to in Panalitix as a sales culture. And I wonder how many of you would say in our organization, we have a very strong sales culture. In professional services, we often have a situation where the owners, the founders, the partners, the most senior people are responsible for all business development and sales. And frankly, we have a situation where many other people don't even want more sales. Because what does more sales mean? It means more work. It means more obligation to clients. It means more duties. And they have to fit that into their day. Now, that would not be where we have a sales culture. You know, we have clients where they educate everyone on sales process and all of these other foundational things, what we're trying to achieve, what we sell, how it benefits clients, who our target client is. The receptionist must be able to recite those things, because the receptionist might be out at a family barbecue or a family gathering where they have an opportunity to mention what they do in their business. And that's when you get a sales culture happening. Different people are involved in sales meetings. There's a sales pipeline. We celebrate success in sales because it gets us closer to the goals. That's when sales has become important and you have a culture of sales in the organization. Everyone is in sales is the idea of a sales culture. Now, with those foundational things, we can move more to the sales process. And the sales process starts with identifying an opportunity. That opportunity may be in your existing client. It might arise because they tell you, hey, I need something. I've got something that I need to accomplish, and I'd like to know if you can help me with it. They may lay it out for you in that regard. More likely, they're also busy with their business and their lives, and you may have to use some detective work. If you're an accountant, you look at their financial statements and how much cash they have and how much tax they paid and what their business goals are from board meetings. If you're a lawyer, you may look at developments in their business and match those to things that you are good at providing, the services that you provide. And that will help you to identify opportunities. If we have done this work on foundations, we will actually eliminate a lot of things which we think may be opportunities because they don't fit with what we are trying to do to get us closer to our sales goal. So this becomes a habit in some organizations where people succeed with sales. Now, here's a part which delights some people and others, it terrifies them. We now have to reach out to our counterparts, and we have to identify who's the decision maker and who influences this deal. Who's the person that will give me a lot of information on what they need, and how do I get in front of them and ask them those questions? You know, some people love to walk across a room of strangers and say to someone, hey, I heard that your business is doing this. maybe we can help you. And other people, that's the most terrifying thing in their lives. But I think we can, if we are confident in what it is that we do, and we believe very strongly in the value we provide because we understand the benefits, that situation becomes a lot easier to create contact with our counterparts and understand what they need. And then we get into what might be a lengthy process of really, really understanding where this need, this opportunity fits in their business. What are they trying to accomplish next week, next month, next year? What's the long-term goal? Why is it important to them? And how will it impact their organization? Now, this might be very simple. I need to file a tax return because I'm late, and it might be very complex. We're thinking of litigating with a partner on a very complex issue. It may take months, even years, to develop this understanding. And this is where I said asking questions and listening very carefully to the responses is a critical part of this sales process. And it may be at that point in time that we are ready to intelligently take what we have learned and resolve it into a proposal which exactly meets the needs of this client to the extent we're able to do that with the services we offer. So we now want to propose something that's relevant, it's meaningful, it's time efficient, and it uses their resources wisely. Some people in professional services are very good at these proposals. They can take the information. By the way, ChatGPT is very helpful in this regard, or other AI programs, to take the notes and the understanding you've developed to put it into a proposal which is meaningful, relevant, and actionable. That's important. But you know what? Anyone who has traveled in various countries and has negotiated, it's quite likely that your potential client, especially on larger deals, will say, well, look, this is kind of interesting what you're proposing, but it's not everything we want, or it's too much, or it's missing something, or we're not sure we like your methodology here, or we're not confident that we're going to get the right results on certain things. And so they're going to have queries. They're going to ask you for more detail and to amplify some of the things that you have asked. And this is where that patience idea is really important that I referred to before. And often what happens in professional services is it's not just about you that's proposing. It's probably about, in a large deal, a team of people. You might have people who will manage the client relationship and keep a very senior relationship with senior people on their end. You may have technicians who are excellent in their own domain, but might not have as good interpersonal skills as we talked about before. You might have administrative people who need to support the work that's being done, and you might be going outside of your organization to subcontractors. Now, what this means is that you have to have everyone singing to the same hymn sheet and understanding the shared goals of your own organization, but also your client organization. And frankly, I've seen a lot of deals fail at this point because there's a different way that people choose to go about dealing with this client, or they're less sensitive to different things. Remember, the deal isn't closed at this point. We're still selling at this point. So we have to work very hard to present ourselves as a collaborative solution. Now we get into the final negotiation. Back here, they're responding to queries about your methodology. You might not have even discussed price at this point, but now we're getting down to the terms. They have sent your contract, your engagement letter, to legal counsel, who's come back and said, well, why do we have to pay you in this country? Or why is the upfront payment so much? Or why are the hourly rates variable for these team members? Or why is the fee as much as it is? Or can we make it a contingency fee, or other things which are specific terms? And excuse me, and quickly responding to those so that we can conclude our proposal is important. And now we get to the point of closing. And you know, there's an expression in sales, ABC, always be closing. ABC, always be closing, right? Because every action that we're taking back here should be driven towards this point of time when the client puts their signature on your digital proposal and probably initiates that initial payment. So when we let things linger, and I've seen professional services people do this a lot, we allow things to delay, and sometimes we even start the work before we have closed the deal. That's dangerous. But there has to be this drive which says, this is not a project unless we have obtained the signature. And that's an administrative function. It's sometimes not what you want the main person in your business to be doing. The person who's negotiated all these terms and understand their goals. Maybe that's more of an administrative function, but it's extremely important. And I've seen deals fall over here. Next is related to closing. It's the administration of sales, because if that engagement letter is not concluded, complete with annexures and addendums, and the initial invoice is not sent, there's a danger that we may not be able to recover things down the line. And then we get to the final part of what I'd say is the sales process or the sales cycle. We now have to go back to the team that's engaged for this project, and we need to say to them, hey, great news, brilliant news. We've just closed that deal with the client that we've been working on for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. We're delighted by this. That means you have a whole lot of work to do to onboard this client, to set up the project, to go through our processes so that we can give the client a delightful experience here. And I've seen deals fall over at this point because the team is not yet ready. They don't give a client a brilliant experience. The client's disappointed because they've really enjoyed building a relationship with you over all this period. But now when it's time to get on with the work, even though it's taken 6 months to get there, we're just not ready. And we give the client a poor experience. So we did some research with about 85 firms in North America and Northern Europe, and we asked them, we looked at their sales performance and where they're succeeding, and we broke down those areas. And this is what you're seeing on the screen, is these are the 15 areas that people claimed that they were succeeding with or not succeeding with. So I hope there's something there where you can see an opportunity to improve, which might help you not just to succeed with sales, but to start to love sales and see it as a process. I think I'm going to pause at that point and ask for any comments, questions, ideas, thoughts, success stories, failures. We're all friends here in IR Global, so we can talk freely about our successes and failures. So Charlie, what I'll do is just hand it over and just see if anyone would like to raise an idea or a question or a comment or a thought.
Dania is waving, yeah.
First of all, thank you. I love the simplicity of the slide you shared with us, because the concepts speak louder than just the overdone visual. So I appreciate everything you shared. What stood out to me was the part about when there are people on the team that need to execute a service that are technical, or let's say have fewer interpersonal skills. Part of what also is the challenge is they're not necessarily incentivized to help close the deal. Maybe they don't have an incentive structure as part of their compensation. So they really don't care one way or another if it closes or not, because they almost in a way would rather have less work to do. How have you seen like successful examples structurally to overcome these obstacles when there are teammates that are non-sales professionals, their technical support, their client, whatever it is, that they're not incentivized as part of their compensation to close the deal, and they're lacking the interpersonal skills? So how can you make the best of a situation like that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dania, and I'm going to give you 2 answers, and I'm going to try and be quick. It's a great question, and we could spend an hour just on that. I'm reminded of the work around finders, minders, grinders. Does that ring a bell to anyone? Have you read that book? Have you? Yeah, okay, so some people are nodding, right? Basically, let me try and give you the 1-minute summary, right? This was work done in the late 60s by some very clever entrepreneurs and academics. They identify 3 key skills in a professional services business, actually in any business: finders, Dania, are people who are great with interpersonal skills. They've got that ability to create relationships. They love selling, marketing, and getting close to their clients. That's what they want to do all the time, right? Then we have minders who are great at managing other people. They build systems, processes, they allocate work, they delegate, they encourage other people to succeed, and so on. Then we have grinders. And grinders are technicians. They say, get out of the way, give me the tools. I don't want to talk to anyone. I just want to get the work done. And often they have less interpersonal skills. And it's helped me as I work with clients to start to, I don't want to overestimate or oversimplify the idea, but it's helped me to think of people in these different buckets and put them in roles which will play to their strengths. So to your question, Dania, point number one is, I don't want anyone near my sales opportunities when they do not exhibit the care or the interest or the finding skills or the interpersonal skills. This is not a school picnic where everyone gets a go. Sales is not that. Sales is a highly specific and refined and focused endeavor in a business. And so we really need to put the people forward who are going to succeed with that. And if a technician wants to come along and say, well, I need to know what's going on, I'm sorry, you don't come along. You don't get to come on. You get to succeed later in the project when we are getting the work done. And leadership's role is to put people in those roles and keep people in those roles and make them feel good about their roles, because they're all important. Every role is important. They just have importance at different times. So this is point number one. Point number two that comes to mind, you mentioned incentives, another giant and complex subject, right? You know, look, many salespeople, but not in professional services so much, are simply incentivized by a percentage of the revenue that they're involved in, either that they work for or that they bring in through sales. I have not had much success with that, or seen that as being very successful in professional services, the idea that it's a financial goal. What I have seen much more success with, and I've had personal success with, is when you can show people that the project that you're about to embark on is going to create disproportionate value in their careers, their professional development, their learning, their skills, their experience. I find it's much easier to get people's attention. So I don't know your business and exactly what you're selling and how that would work for you, but the first port of call for me would be, where people are less excited about the sale than I am, would be to say, don't you see, this could be a game-changing career development for you in terms of learning, because people love learning. They sometimes don't know it at the time. They don't know it at the time of learning, because learning's hard. But 1 year later, 3 years later, 5 years later, when you meet them, they say, wow, I look back on that stuff we did back then with that client, and it was amazing. I learned so much of that. It was hard. It was really hard. We had to work all night and all that, but I learned so much from that process. So there could be a time for financial incentives, but I would really encourage people to look at professional development incentives and learning incentives as well. I hope that addresses your question a little, Dania.
That was great. Thank you, Mark. We have got a couple of questions queuing up. So Andrew is the next person who raised his hand. So Andrew, over to yourself.
Thank you. And Mark, thank you again for giving us the presentation today. My question's along the same lines as Dania's, but going back to earlier in the process, you talked about making sales a whole team effort and getting the entire team in that mindset of, even if you're at a barbecue or a party and overhearing something. But you kind of touched on this just a minute ago, but what are some of the strategies or I guess strategies that you've seen that have worked the best to incentivize people to have that mindset and to be listening, even, you know, like you said in the beginning, like the receptionist or somebody who's not directly involved in the work, but who should have that mindset as well?
Yeah, it's another good question, Andrew. Thank you. So two things come to mind quickly, and I like to term this a sales culture. because a culture is a deeper, deep-seated notion in a business, which is pervasive and it influences all of our behaviors. So if we think of it that way, how do we go about that? I think there are two things which come to mind. I'm sure there's many more, but this is what's coming to my mind now. One is the role of leadership to actually demonstrate that sales is important and is a major part of the business plan. So I talked about goals earlier. Now, if I ask, I don't know your business, Andrew, if I ask all of your team members, what are the sales goals? I wonder what reaction I would get. Would they be able to say, well, actually, we're a very driven organization to grow. 2025 is going to be the year of growth for us. We expect to go from 100 clients to 150 clients, and revenues are going to increase by this much. And I play a role in that. I play a role in that because I'm a finder, minder, or grinder. It doesn't matter what the role is or how small it is, but they are linking their activities, their roles, to a broader goal. And it's the job of leadership to articulate that goal with clarity and with excitement and vigor. It's got to be a worthy goal, a meaningful goal, an interesting goal, right? And that's the challenge of leadership, of course. So this is one thing that comes to mind. The second thing is much more around process. You know, I'd love to know, maybe just a quick show of hands, how many of you have a regular sales meeting in your organizations, maybe a weekly sales meeting? I can see a couple of hands, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 5. I'm seeing a lot of non-hands as well, right? Which tells me that the entrenchment of sales as an important activity in the business is maybe less in some of those organizations, right? What does a sales meeting do? It forces you to get a bunch of interested people in a room, people involved in sales, and say, hey, what opportunities do we have on the table now? What's the value of those opportunities? Who's responsible for pursuing those opportunities? What's the next step we're going to take in each of those opportunities? What's the risk with these? How much dollar value do each of these opportunities bring to our organization? And are they going to get us closer to that goal? Just by asking those questions and having that conversation, you are elevating the importance of sales in the organization. And if you do that for 3 months, you'd be surprised how the receptionist says, hey, I was at that barbecue, and you know, my uncle's got a business who seems to need something that I heard we were talking about back in a meeting 2 months ago. I don't know if it's true. I'm not sure if it's correct, but maybe you should speak to him, Andrew. And you say, sure, I'm happy to speak to your uncle, right? So the point is, by repeating these basic processes, a sales pipeline, sales meeting, and also celebrating success, whatever that means in your organization and your culture, those are things which might raise the profile of sales and get it to the status of a sales culture.
Excellent. Thank you.
Who do we have next, Charlie?
Great, thank you. Sorry, I wasn't quick enough on my mute button. Thank you, Andrew, for your question. Neil, we're over to you now, please.
Thanks, Charlotte. And Mark, thank you very much. It's been very insightful. I have a question around pricing of professional services. So I'm the founding partner of a technology-focused law firm in India, and we're a small boutique firm. Often I find pitch to clients, they come back and say, hey, look, we work for a very large firm, and you know, the prices they offer are much lower than what you're asking for, and therefore we don't see an incentive to work with you. At other times, I get a feeling that we're leaving a lot back on the table, and you know, we could have actually gotten a richer pricing, but we haven't been able to achieve that. So would you have any insights to offer on how a professional services firm should go about pricing its offerings?
These are great questions, and I wish we had those many hours. Pricing, what a giant concept that influences everything we're talking about today. The things that come to mind, Neil, are, first of all, as business people, we have to recover the costs that we invest in a project, and we have to make a margin. And the goals that we talked about before should specify what it is that you would like to accomplish in your business, right? So there's a very fundamental concept on price. We need to make a profit. And in professional services, that needs probably to be a healthy profit, because we need to invest quite a lot to bring on clients, depending on your business, right? Technology-enabled legal services, I don't understand that well enough, but you have a profit goal, number one. Second influence on pricing is the market. And this is the one that I think sometimes professional services people get a little bit lazy on, because who exactly, if maybe you know the answer to this, Neil, who exactly are those competitors? And it might vary by client, by region, by project, right? And sometimes the competitors are not as obvious as you think. You know, my businesses used to compete with the Big Four, and we didn't have to win everything, but we often won against the Big Four just because they didn't have the time or the energy or the interest to go after deals the size that we were going after. So although they're a formidable competitor for us, we benefited from the fact that they were a little bit lazy in their approach to the clients that we were taking on. So this is a question of the market, and I encourage people when it comes to pricing to get a clear sense of who you're competing with, what they are charging. And remember, in professional services, it's often apples and oranges. It's not identical. So we have to be a little bit creative as we analyze the market. But the third thing that I think is related to that is differentiation and articulating the value you bring. And this is where we get into a challenging area, which is to say not just I'm offering technology-enabled legal services, but I'm enabling clients to fill in the bracket, mitigate their risk in all kinds of legal areas, or grow their businesses by at least 20% through a better legal function in their business, or grow their profit, or grow their enterprise value, or improve the lifestyle of the owners or the founders or something. What is that big idea, which is where you have the most impact? Because if we understand that, and if we understand how it's relevant to the clients, we can really work on differentiation there. You know, think about the things you've bought recently, and think about your price sensitivities on certain things. There's people who will buy a luxury car for way more than it's objectively worth because it makes them feel a certain way. And there's some people who will not pay 1 cent more for something because they really don't care about the experience or the perceived value from that. So without knowing your business, Neil, how do we get you a little closer to talking about that value proposition, which excites people and is different to what your competitors ask? If we can do those three things, the understanding of your own costs, the market understanding, the competitor understanding, and then the value proposition, which is differentiated, your pricing challenges become a lot more simple.
Brilliant. Thank you,
Vague,
Mark.
but those are the ideas.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have another question in the chat, but just before I go to that, Frigo, thank you very much for putting the link in the chat for everybody to see, the Burbet link. So thank you for that on Finders, Minders, Binders and Grinders. Very helpful, I'm sure, to many of us. So Mark, Stephanie has put a note in the group. She's struggling with video and things. She thanks you very much for your time. But her question is, how do you go back to organizations who you have provided a quote to, but who then go quiet and simply just don't respond? So even if you send any more questions, etc., in a follow-up, she'd like some feedback on why they don't want to proceed, timing, pricing, other factors. But these days, people often seem to ghost you rather than send a simple reply to say not interested. Hard to then know how much or whether to chase.
Yeah. Good question. I think, again, two things are coming to mind. One is very tactical. And, you know, I still make this mistake to this day, actually, I'm embarrassed to say. But what is it? Always set a meeting from a meeting. That idea that if I'm meeting you today, Stephanie, I think I'm talking to, if I'm meeting you today and I'm proposing something, the way I will finish the meeting is I will say, Hey, Stephanie, so it's been great talking with you. I think we understand what you want. I'm going to go away and I'm going to put this proposal together, and I'm going to have the proposal to you in 48 hours. Shall we set a time now to go through the proposal in detail? Because inevitably, you might have some questions, you might want to discuss the way we go about this, etc. Now, that is something that very seldom in that meeting will the client say, nah, I don't want to set that meeting. Now, look, if many in professional services, often what we're selling is relatively complex and it will need some interpretation and there will be some queries. So why wouldn't people want to do that? If the person says, actually, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to meet you again. I think there's a series of questions. Oh, are you feeling that we're not heading in the direction here that you want? Is there some obstacle that that is standing in the way of us proceeding with this? You can ask those direct questions if they prefer not to meet you. So it's a very simple idea. Sometimes we get excited by the fact that we're going to go and prepare a proposal and we forget that simple step. So it's quite tactical. Another tactic is to create scarcity. So, you know, often we're so excited to want to sell that we say, yeah, we'd love to work with you. We're going to get the proposal over. It's going to be great. We can't wait to get started. But what if we held back and said, Stephanie, I want to work with you. I'm a little bit concerned that I may not have the resources available unless you're able to proceed with this project quite soon. And I'm thinking in the next couple of weeks. If you're not able to proceed, we might have to go back to the drawing board with our proposal and rethink our resource requirements and maybe our pricing. Now, what you're doing there is creating a sense of scarcity, which will illustrate to you whether the client is really interested or not, because they might say, I don't care. I don't care because I'm not ready to proceed anyway, right? Another tactic is to make sure we have the right people in the room, because the organizations that you deal with are usually quite complex. There are multiple decision-making layers, and that proposal you've submitted might need to be escalated to someone else. And there's nothing wrong with asking. There's nothing wrong with asking, how are you going to decision?
Has anyone else just lost Mark, or is it me? Okay, bear with him a second. He may well come back. It is nearly 3 a.m. his time, so I'm presuming his internet has decided that it doesn't like him very much at this time in the morning. Mark, are you back with us?
I am here.
There we go.
Lose you guys.
Yeah, sorry, we lost you completely then, Mark. Sorry about that.
Oh, sorry about that. I seem to have a strong.
No, we're losing you again.
I was just
Mark, if you can hear us, I'm really sorry. You are turning into a robot. So you are in and out at the moment. I will give you just a second to see whether we can find you back. I've just muted you for just a second because it was a little back and forth. Just with what Mark was talking about then, guys, I don't know, you know, with the strategic proposal, I have major FOMO. So if anybody ever does that to me, the fear of missing out for me, you can have what you want from me within 12 hours. It's not a problem. If I thought I was going to lose out on the chance of you working with me and you gave me that fear of missing out, I would panic. So I enjoyed that from Mark very much. Let's see if he's back. Any joy, Mark? You're on mute at the moment. I can't unmute you. I'm sorry. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better. Yeah.
Okay. I just changed to my phone connection. Sorry about that. I can't explain that.
It's okay.
Yeah, so some tactics for Stephanie on how to ask directly what's the decision-making process for this proposal and to set a timeline and so on might be helpful. But I guess the other thing, so those are some tactics, but we have to ask the question, Stephanie, about the other things that we went through earlier, which is, are we proposing a meaningful, relevant solution? Have we properly understood what this client is trying to accomplish and what their broad goals are? Because that's where if we don't do that, we may well not succeed with the proposal. So I'd encourage you to go back and very honestly appraise how successfully you've understood their goals, their needs, and how this is important to them, and how you will impact their business in a positive way.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate that. Well, I think we're nearly out of time, but in true IR Global style, we have to do a photo. So I'm going to ask everybody to look at the cameras and smile. But there are so many of you on the call. You are across 2 screens for me. So I'll do one and then I'll give you a breather and then I'll ask you to do it again. So if everybody's ready, if I can ask you to all look at the screen and smile for me after 3. 1, 2, 3. Lovely. Let me just paste that and then I will take the other photo. You'd think they would find a better way of being able to do this on Zoom, but they do not. Right. Okay. So second photo after 3, everybody. 1, 2, 3. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any final points, any last thing that they want to say to Mark other than thank you? Because I can see from all of the nodding of the heads as we've been going through that everybody's found that really quite beneficial, etc. So, you know, from IR Global, Mark, thank you very much for your time. It's appreciated. Go, Frigo.
Sorry, you recorded this. Can we retrieve the recording somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure that it's sent across to everybody tomorrow morning. I'll get it sent over. Absolutely. All right.
Charlie, if I may, are you hearing me now?
Yes.
If I may, we have, through the Panalitix website, we have a learning hub which contains a whole lot of material on this subject, sales, and a whole bunch of other subjects. Just give me 1 second here. I won't spend a long time here, but this is the Panalitix Learning Hub, and you'll see a variety of topics. Today, we're talking about attracting clients. If I click through to that, you'll see this sell with conviction here, which I used quite a lot of the ideas in here. And if I click through to that, you'll see resources on sales skills and sales process and client needs and so on, and some sales templates, etc. Some exercises you can do internally and some of our tools. So please take a look at that. I should add that the resource section is completely free. You just need to sign up and you can access that material for free. Some of the tools require a subscription, a small subscription. But if that's interesting to you, please consider going and following up there. And if anyone wants to chat more, I love talking about sales and business development. So if anyone wants to chat more, Charlotte, I think they know how to get hold of me. Or
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, if you need any of Mark's information, just let me know. But he's on the website. He attends conferences, so you get to meet him in person, which is always a pleasure. But thank you, like I say, Mark, from myself, from everybody here. There's a few notes in the chat to say thank you. And the one thing, well, not the one thing, one of the things that I've taken away from this is my ABC, Mark. So thank you very much. Always be closing, everybody. Thank you, and good night and good morning.
Thanks.